Hello, my name is Howard Knepper, and I'm a Republican running for the U.S. Senate from Florida in the general election. Every Sunday, I will be recording a video giving you my views on the weekly events that are facing the state of Florida and our country. I want to talk to you now about the police relations and with the public. I have recently traveled to Charlotte, North Carolina during the terrible time that they were having after the shooting that took place. I then traveled to my home in North Carolina to do more research between police relations and the public. And I then traveled to Baltimore, Maryland to also visit family, but make it an informative trip to also discuss the police relations with the public. I have for at least a year have had time myself to think about what and how we could improve the relationships between the police and the public and help reduce the tension, especially in the inner cities and across the country. So I want to go into detail about the plan that I had talked about earlier, about a month ago. In my travels to Charlotte, North Carolina, and to Baltimore, Maryland, I have come to a conclusion that the best way to bring these shootings down and lessen the tension is as follows. The police have an awesome responsibility, and we have to make sure that the police have our support. When we call them, they're there for us. I've said before that the police are part of our lives. We have our freedom because of the military, and we have our freedom every day because of the police. And the police have to use the ultimate use of force when necessary. And it's important that we understand that they have a lot of stress. Now, we also understand that they encounter some very difficult and dangerous situations with the public. Now, we also know recently that the public have had some confrontations with the police, and there's been fatalities. Some of those instances have not been to court yet, so we have to wait till we have the full investigations are finished. But we have to be concerned about both, the public and the police. So what I believe is this. The police, if they had continuing education every year, and that continuing education would be set forth by Congress. Congress would hold hearings. Those hearings might take 6 months, 8 months. There would be numerous police officers that had served for many years to give their input. And once Congress were finished with all those hearings, they would then set forth ongoing training for every single police officer in America. Now, it wouldn't matter if it was any police officer serving anywhere in the United States. And it wouldn't matter if it's a captain, a sergeant, a police officer that started yesterday. Every single police officer would then have to go through the ongoing training. Now, that ongoing training might be 40 hours of ongoing training once a year. It might be a test that would be administered once a year. The test might be broken into 4 different categories. The ongoing training might be 4 different categories. There might be other things that Congress might set forth for the ongoing training. If an officer did not pass that ongoing training, they would not lose their job. They would still get a paycheck. but they would not be able to serve with a weapon, and they would not be able to go out into the field with a weapon until they passed that test and they completed that ongoing training. I believe that a lot of times officers are under stress. They may be serving for 10 or 12 years and then all of a sudden they have some stress. So I don't see anything wrong with the ongoing training. I think it would be good for the officer, and I think it would help the officer in certain situations be able to handle them differently. Not all officers. I mean, some officers are experienced and they may not have a difficulty in certain situations when it comes to using the ultimate force. But regardless, every single officer, no matter how long they've been serving, have to take the ongoing training, and they have to take whatever testing Congress would set forth, as I said before. Now, the other part of this is that in many police departments, it's very difficult for a police department to remove an officer from the force if they feel that that officer may not be, should not continue to serve with a weapon. Well, we're going to eliminate that because it's going to be a federal law. We're not federalizing the police. We're simply setting forth federal ongoing education. And that eliminates a police department having to take the weapon away from the police officer. It wouldn't be up to the police department in anywhere in America to do that. It would be a federal law, and if the officer did not comply from what's set forth once a year, then the officer could not serve with a weapon. Now, I think there's a lot of police that are going to like this idea, and there's others that won't like it. But there comes a time that we see so many shootings, and of course we're not blaming the police. As someone that would go to the Senate, I would not be going to the Senate with the attitude that we have a problem with police officers, that they're wrong all the time. That's not the case. We have a lot of people out there in the public that are extremely dangerous, and the police have to confront them and use the use of force. But I think it's time that at least Congress discuss having mandatory ongoing training for police officers. And I already know that they already have it in throughout the country within their own state and their own municipalities. But that's irrelevant. They still have to do whatever the state wants them to do. But we're going to step it up one more level so they have that additional training. And I'm sure that there's a lot of police departments and other officers that are happy to hear this, because they probably know certain officers that need that help. We're not trying to hurt anyone in this situation. And I certainly, again, want to reiterate that I am not blaming any police officer for the problems that are occurring. I'm simply saying that it can't hurt to have ongoing education for all police officers. And I think the public also would feel more comfortable. And then when it comes time in a confrontation, maybe in certain situations, the use of force may not have to be used. And maybe that ongoing training could save an officer's life as well as a civilian person's life. So it's just a discussion. It's something that I believe is important to discuss, but we have to do something to make sure that the police are safer and that civilians are safer. And I hope that that discussion will happen in Congress. If I'm not elected to the Senate, in my weekly videos, I'll be discussing more about it. But I've reached out to the public as I've gone to Charlotte, North Carolina, to Baltimore, and in between. And I've talked to officers, I've talked to state troopers, and I've talked to civilians. And after all of my research, I think that this is something that should be discussed. Thank you, and good night.